What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Truth be told, we all hate the queen's pawn game because in its nature, d4 is aimed at slowing down black's development rather than accelerating white's. In fact, most d4 openings lead to closed positions, and that's one thing that confuses most e4 e5 players. And that's why in today's study, I want to show you one uncommon defense to surprise your d4 opponents. Beginning with a move pawn to c6, which has potential to transpose the game back to the Caro-Kann defense in case white plays pawn to e4. But that's not the point for this video. We still want to see the move pawn to c4, after which we simply go pawn to b5. Now, before I show you some of the tricks and traps that I have prepared for you in this video, I want to highlight something from here. Try this in bullet. Guys, you are going to come back to this video's comment section and thank me for this. The thing is, 90% of the times you're always going to be up a pawn simply because by this point, white normally pre-moves knight to f3 or pawn to e3 or knight c3, and of course the top played move is cb, after which you take back. The only difference between this and the actual Polish, by the way, is in this line you don't have a c pawn, while in the Polish defense you normally have your c pawn on c7. But anyways, most of the times you're always going to see pawn to e4, after which you go bishop b7. And now I'm interested in the top played move pawn to f3 at this point. s6 is the stable move that you may always consider, but again there's this tricky move that I always want you guys to remember. Pawn to e5. Think of this as a clearance sacrifice. The whole idea is that if white takes the b pawn, now you can simply go queen a5 check, trying to win that light squared bishop, and after knight c3, you simply go bishop b4, pinning that knight to the king. The threat is to take and then take back with the queen, winning either the rook or the pawn on d4. And another thing that white won't see here, I can guarantee you, is the fact that you are attacking the bishop as well. For example, the top played move in the Lichess database is knight e2, as you can see, which gives you time to win the bishop for free. And this is game over for white. So that's just one little trap that you should always keep in mind with this e5 line. Again, if white plays bishop d2, this is even worse. Yes, you can take the knight if you want to, knowing that on the next move you're going to take the light squared bishop for free. But the best way to convert the advantage is to start with a pawn. So e takes d4, attacking this knight, and there's nothing that white can do here. Literally nothing. If they rescue their light squared bishop, you can just take, and that's all. Maybe if they do something like knight back to b1, I don't even know what should happen here. Queen takes b5 is the way to go. So this e5 move is something that you can also give a try in this same line. Very sneaky move. Another move that white may try is queen b3, as you can see in the Lichess database, which doesn't work either because you can simply take that free bishop. It's a free bishop. So most of your opponents, be it in rapid, blitz or bullet, are not going to see this move. Trust me with all your teeth. Anyway, the best white can do here is just to go back, play bishop e2, and allow you to get back your pawn. That's all. And then you take back with check, and since you're attacking the rook, here they should block with their bishop, not the queen, allowing you to take another pawn. And this kind of looks like the Benko Gambit for those who play the Benko Gambit in structure, because you're going to put your king's rook on b8 someday, and your queen's rook will remain on a8, trying to control these files. That is in the end game, by the way. And in this position, it is safe to say black is just up a pawn for nothing, period. With a better pawn structure, by the way, there are so many weaknesses that white needs to address. So that's just how tricky this pawn to e5 move is back on move 5. So instead of going s6, you should also try this move pawn to e5 if you want to play actively. Again, let's say you go pawn to e5 instead of s6. We saw how bad bishop takes can be, but what if white just takes? The only thing you need to know though is after d takes, the game becomes dead equal with many chances for black to win. So I said think of this capture as a clearance sacrifice, and you don't have to worry about this pawn because you are going to get it sooner or later. You begin with the move bishop c5, sacrificing this pawn, hoping to go in the same lines that I just showed you. For example, if white carelessly takes, again you have the possibility to go queen a5 in the near future, but only after you take on g1. That's the purpose of playing bishop c5 first, so that after you take that free knight, you can force white to take back. How is that free, by the way? See this. After rook takes, now you can simply go queen b6, attacking two pieces, which is hardly easy for white to defend. These are traps that work even in classical tournaments, you guys, and I'm serious about this. This will come as a surprise to most of your opponents. Even if they do the right thing, you will end up having a very good middle game. Remember, the whole purpose of this defense is to change the direction of the queen's pawn game. You guys don't get it. See, the typical queen's pawn game that white is comfortable with is this kind of a setup where they play c4, you go pawn to e6, the Nimzo Indian, and then they go knight to f3, and then you play d5, then they play knight c3, you go bishop e7, they play cd, you take back, then bishop g5, c6, pawn to e3, castle shot, and then they start putting more pressure along this diagonal. This is what a typical d4 player is looking out for. In the near future, they also want to advance their e-pawn and open up the center or go e5. And the most annoying part of this type of queen's pawn is white always keeps an eye on the e5 square where they want to plant that knight, and that becomes so annoying. Besides, there are some other lines where white can even surprise you with an early pawn to g4 move. I mean, how do you even prepare for all these things? They want you to take so that they can just mess up the game completely, begin attacking from the word go. Let's say you retreat your knight back to f6, which is one of the moves, and then they go rook takes g7, you go knight c6, they go knight g5, putting more pressure on this poor pawn, which most black players defend, by the way. And this is everything that white prays for, and I hope most of you guys didn't know that this line even exists. So it is for these reasons why we want to take a typical d4 player out of his comfort zone, just to avoid these kinds of surprises. So in short, with this new Polish strategy, we are trying to introduce a whole new game that will take most d4 players out of their comfort zone, period. There are times when white to try to stick to the actual queen's pawn game that they know instead of going e4. For example, after d4, c6, c4, or knight to f3, that will still come. You go pawn to b5, cb, cb, and then instead of playing pawn to e4, they just go knight to f3 just to avoid things. So sticking to your plan, you can still go bishop b7, but even knight to f6 is not much of a stretch. So let's just say bishop b7, and then they play pawn to e3 because that's what they like doing, simply attacking your pawn. Well, in these kinds of lines, though a6 is playable, I like gaining more central space with a move pawn to b4, period. Just stopping knight c3 or knight a3 somehow, and just in case white plays a3, you simply go pawn to e6. Don't complicate stuff, let them take, you take back, and this is when they play knight c3. If bishop d2, you just exchange bishops and continue developing. But the thing is, you just continue developing towards the center of the board, and let's say after bishop d3, you can simply castle shot, and let's say they castle shot as well. Since there's nothing that is happening on the king side, and I mean there's nothing that you can literally do on this side of the board, you try to buy time on the other side of the board. The other move that doesn't look cool but still playable is pawn to d5, by the way, even if your light squad bishop is behind. Why? Because you have intentions to go knight e4 and replace your pawn on e4, supported by your light squad bishop. This is very much playable, by the way. The idea is not to checkmate an opponent very quickly, but just to have a balanced game. If queen c2 is played, feel free to take. If queen e2, for example, this is where you can even play pawn to d5, period. That's what I was talking about. And this makes a lot of sense, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to see how that works. Let's say bishop d2, because what else? Just making some moves. Now you go knight e4. You see what I was talking about. The game is still equal. If they take, that'll be a blunder because you can simply take back with your pawn and fork these two pieces. Bishop takes doesn't do a thing because your capture comes with an attack on the queen, so white has to attend to that, and then you take that free bishop. So they are not going to do that. And so after knight e4, it's not a good idea for white to take. But let's say white takes with a bishop. How about that? Because they didn't like that pressure. Again, you can just take back. Yep. So the goal is to support this pawn with your light squad bishop. In the near future, you intend to go f5, then f4. Just destroy the king side completely. You put your light squad bishop on d5, by the way. That's the whole idea of bishop b7, pawn to d5, and knight e4. You simply want to replace your d5 pawn with your light squad bishop, period. So again, this is for typical d4 players who try to solidify things. And after pawn to b5, there are people who won't just take this. They'll try as much as possible to complicate stuff. For example, you may see them move pawn to e3 here, but you can just take, allowing them to take, and then you now go back to your semi-Slav ideas where you put your center pawns on light squares, creating this little triangle. And by the way, this will now be an improved semi-Slav in that it'll be easier for you to develop your light squared bishop as well as your queen's knight. Now, let me show you one brilliant way of fighting this knight here. Remember, this knight is usually defended by the d pawn. So the secret here is to go c5 whenever you see this. Given a chance, by the way, to make the e5 square weaker. For example, they can go pawn to f4, it doesn't matter, and then you can take. That's all. So cd is okay. Let them take. This doesn't just look to be right. You can even play knight b d7 here, trying to fight this. Knight b d7, then go queen b6. So let's say bishop e3, then you go bishop b7. Again, why putting your light squared bishop behind your d pawn? There is this idea that we want to play. Let's say rook c1, then you go knight e4. This is a very brilliant idea, guys. Next, you just want to play pawn to f5, given a chance, or take. If knight takes, well and good. Let's say bishop b5. Now you go knight to f6 because you have a possibility to put your knight on d5 and continue playing chess. Here's another secret, you guys. For those of you who like playing the Caro-Kann advanced variation, you can also achieve that in our simple defense. Let me show you. After white plays d4, you go c6, c4, b5, and let's just say white plays pawn to e3, you take, and then bishop takes, then you go d5, and bishop d3. If you don't want to play the semi-Slav structure with the immediate pawn to e6, go knight to f6 first, and this is when you're going to see your opponents playing knight to f3, the top played move in the Lichess database, and only then do you develop your light squared bishop like this. How cool is that, you guys? In the normal queen's pawn game, we avoid developing our light squared bishop early because it leaves our b7 pawn weak. For example, white usually plays queen b3 once you move your light squared bishop, attacking the undefended pawn and also targeting the d5 pawn. But note in this case, you don't have a weak pawn on b7 and your d5 pawn is well defended. So this can also be thought of as an improved Caro-Kann defense. Okay, let's say pawn to h3 is played. Then you go bishop h5, simple chess. So white castles short. And now this is when you go pawn to e6, simple stuff. Let's say knight bd2, then you go bishop d6, preparing for pawn to e5 given a chance. And if white plays pawn to e4 here, the best I can advise is to go bishop e7 just to avoid this fork, after which you go knight f d7 and pawn to c5. They play queen c2, then you castle short, and then start fighting for the e5 square. At the end of the day, you have two options, either to go the Caro-Kann way with bishop g4 after knight to f3, or the semi-Slav way with the immediate pawn to e6. It's up to you. Right, hope this will help, and let me know what you think about this improved polished defense that I just showed you in today's video. And don't forget to hit the like button, be sure to subscribe if you are new, and share this video if you can. Also follow me on Patreon, which is my membership page where I post other premium content and other long form videos that I can't post on YouTube. So until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye bye.